All right, strap in because today we're going deep on something that sounds like straight up science fiction, decentralized metaverse economies.
Metaverse economies.
Yeah. You sent over this research paper, and honestly, my head's already spinning.
Oh, yeah.
Virtual land is the next gold rush. Digital sneakers are trading like blue chip stocks. I mean, where do we even start?
Well, the first thing to understand is that this isn't just hype. This research paper really digs into how blockchain technology, the Ethereum and Polygon, actually builds these economies where you can truly own your digital assets.
Okay, but haven't we seen this before?
Yeah.
Like, I vaguely remember Second Life, and they had their own currencies and economies.
Right.
So what makes this so different?
You're right. There have been attempts at virtual economies before, but the key difference here is the blockchain. In those older models, everything was controlled by a single company, right?
Hmm.
They could just change the rules whenever they wanted. They could make your virtual possessions disappear.
Yeah, that's no good.
No, it's not. But the blockchain changes the game completely. It's like a giant transparent ledger that everyone can see and nobody can tamper with. So when you own a digital asset in a decentralized metaverse, it's truly yours. It's like having a digital deed that's permanently recorded and verifiable.
So no more virtual dictators controlling everything.
Exactly. And to really see how this plays out in the real world, this research paper focuses on the sandbox, which is one of the leading blockchain-based metaverses.
Okay, so break it down for me.
Okay.
What's happening in the sandbox that has everybody so excited?
Well, just like any economy, the sandbox has its own currency called sand, and it has its own land called land.
Got it.
But here's where it gets interesting. Each plot of land is a unique NFT.
So it's like a digital deed to a piece of virtual property.
Precisely. And people are buying and selling these land NFTs for real money, sometimes for eye-watering sums. The researchers found that the location of your virtual land, just like in the real world, can drastically affect its value. Imagine owning a plot of virtual land right next to Snoop Dogg's virtual mansion.
Wow. So you're telling me the success of this whole metaverse hinges on the value of its digital currency.
Yeah.
That seems a little precarious, right?
Yeah.
What happens if sand crashes? Does the whole virtual world just collapse?
That's a great question. The exchange rate is definitely a key factor.
Yeah.
A rising exchange rate for sand can attract new users who see a potential for profit. But if sand gets too expensive, it can actually discourage people from participating. It's a delicate balancing act.
It all sounds very Wild West to me.
Yeah.
But even in the Wild West, there were sheriffs, right?
Right.
Who's keeping things in check in the sandbox?
It might sound counterintuitive, but even in a supposedly decentralized world, there's still a need for some kind of governance. The research paper calls it the metaverse government. And in the sandbox, it's a combination of a company and a foundation that sets the rules of the game.
Oh, okay. So they're like the virtual city planners.
Yeah.
Zoning, building codes, that kind of thing.
You could say that. They manage the supply of land. They govern the virtual environment. They even have a system for taxing economic activity within the sandbox.
Yeah.
It's an interesting tension, right?
Yeah.
Trying to maintain a decentralized system while still having some level of control.
This idea of a metaverse government is intriguing, but are there any downsides to having this governing body,
Yeah.
even if it's supposed to be decentralized?
Yeah, there are.
Like, does their involvement impact the value of sand at all?
That's where things get really interesting. The research actually found that the actions of the metaverse government, things like creating new digital assets, didn't directly influence the sand exchange rate.
So they can't manipulate the market for their own benefit.
It seems not, at least not directly.
Okay.
But what they can influence is user participation. Their decisions can encourage or discourage people from getting involved in the metaverse, which indirectly affects the economy.
Okay, I'm starting to see how complex this all is.
Yeah.
It's not just about buying virtual land and hoping it goes up in value.
Right.
There's this whole intricate ecosystem at play.
Exactly. And we haven't even touched on the fact that users can actually trade their digital assets outside of the sandbox using other cryptocurrencies.
Wait, hold on. So if I buy like a virtual sword in the sandbox,
Yeah,
I can actually sell it on a completely different platform using a different cryptocurrency.
you can.
Walk me through how that works.
It all comes down to the open nature of these decentralized systems. While sand is the official currency of the sandbox, the technology allows users to find workarounds. Think of it like exchanging dollars for euros. The underlying value is still there, even though you're using a different currency. The fact that users can bypass sand creates a real dilemma for the metaverse operators.
So they're trying to make their own currency valuable, but also allowing this free trade of assets.
Right.
That sounds like a recipe for headaches.
It's a balancing act for sure. They need to create an environment where sand is desirable, but without stifling the freedom that makes decentralized economies so attractive. And remember, we're still very early in this game. Who knows what innovations or challenges lie ahead?
Okay, my brain needs a break. But before we move on, I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So this metaverse government can encourage the creation of these digital assets, but they can't directly control the value of sand. But users can actually trade those assets outside the sandbox using other cryptocurrencies, which could potentially undermine the value of sand, thus creating a dilemma for the metaverse operators.
You got it. You're picking this up quickly.
Well, I have you to thank for that. This is a lot to absorb, but I'm already seeing how these decentralized metaverse economies could be a real game changer.
They're certainly shaking things up, and we've only just begun to explore the possibilities.
And that's what we'll be doing in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned, because we're about to venture even deeper into this uncharted territory. Welcome back. So we've established that these decentralized metaverse economies are built on blockchain technology, which allows for true ownership of digital assets. But I'm still kind of wrestling with this idea. Like, is there really a difference between owning something like a cool skin in a traditional video game versus owning a digital asset in the sandbox?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all just pixels on a screen.
Yeah, that's where the power of decentralization comes into play. In a traditional game, the company that runs it has ultimate control, right? They can change the rules, take away your items, or even shut the whole thing down. Remember all those hours you poured into that game?
Yeah.
Poof, gone.
Yeah, that does seem a little unfair, especially if you've like spent real money on those in-game items.
Exactly. But with decentralized ownership in a metaverse like the sandbox, your assets are recorded on the blockchain. The metaverse government can't just delete them.
Right.
They're truly yours to keep, sell, or trade as you see fit.
So it's like owning a piece of virtual real estate, but with like an ironclad digital deed.
That's a great analogy. The blockchain acts as a public ledger that everyone can see and verify, preventing any single entity from messing with it. It gives users a level of control and security that traditional gaming economies just can't match.
Okay. I'm starting to get the appeal, but I'm also curious about the real world implications. Like, how do these decentralized economies actually affect us outside of the virtual world?
That's a crucial question,
Mm-hmm.
and one that researchers are still grappling with. But one of the most promising aspects is the potential for economic empowerment,
Mm-hmm.
especially for creators.
Yeah.
Remember how we talked about users creating those digital assets?
Yeah.
Well, in a decentralized metaverse, they can actually earn a living by selling their creations directly to other users.
So instead of being beholden to a big game studio or corporation, these creators can become like independent entrepreneurs in the metaverse.
Yeah,
That's pretty radical.
it is. And it gives them a lot more control over their work, their pricing, and their profits. It's like the Etsy or Shopify of the virtual world, where creators can connect directly with their customers.
That's an interesting parallel. But what about those of us who aren't like artists or tech wizards? Like, how do we benefit from these decentralized economies?
Yeah.
Can we just kind of sit back and watch the virtual world go by?
Not necessarily. Just
Yeah.
like in the real world, you can participate as a consumer in a metaverse economy.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to buy a unique piece of digital art directly from the artist without any gallery fees or commissions.
Okay.
Or how about buying a virtual concert ticket directly from the musician, cutting out Ticketmaster and all those pesky fees?
So no more Ticketmaster. Now you're talking.
Right.
I'm starting to warm up to this whole metaverse thing.
And let's not forget about virtual real estate.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You could buy a plot of land in the sandbox and then rent it out to other users who want to build experiences there.
I could become a virtual landlord.
You could.
I'll have to brush up on my digital eviction notices.
It's not quite the same as owning physical property, but the principle is similar.
Mm-hmm.
And as the metaverse grows in popularity, the value of that virtual land could potentially skyrocket. It's all about recognizing the potential for growth in these digital economies and getting in early.
Okay, let's pause for a second. I remember you mentioned earlier that the exchange rate of sand can fluctuate.
Right.
If I'm just buying a digital item for fun, does that really matter?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of the metaverse, but it's important to remember that the exchange rate of sand influences the price of everything within that virtual world. If the value of sand plummets, That cool digital item you bought today might be worth a lot less tomorrow.
So there's a real financial risk involved, even if I'm not trying to become a, metaverse mogul.
There is. It's essential to approach these decentralized economies with the same caution you would any investment. Don't get me wrong, there's tremendous potential for growth and innovation, but it's not without its risks.
This is giving me serious whiplash.
Yeah.
1 minute it's all digital art and virtual concerts, and the next minute we're talking about financial risks and market volatility.
Right.
It makes you realize that these metaverses, for all their potential, are still subject to the same forces as the real world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speculation, volatility, risk. These are all things we have to contend with, both in the digital world and the real world.
Right.
But on the flip side, these decentralized economies also offer incredible opportunities for disruption and innovation that we can't even fully grasp yet.
It's a bit like the early days of the internet when nobody really knew what it was going to become. We're on the cusp of something potentially huge, but there are bound to be bumps along the way. What do you think will be the biggest hurdles for these metaverse economies moving forward?
I think one of the biggest challenges will be finding that sweet spot between user adoption and decentralization.
Yeah.
Metaverse operators need to attract a wide range of users to make their platforms successful,
Right.
but they also need to stay true to the principles of decentralization.
It's like walking that tightrope we talked about earlier.
Right.
Trying to balance control and freedom.
Yeah.
Too much control and you stifle innovation.
Yeah.
Too little control and the whole thing could descend into chaos.
Precisely. It's a delicate balancing act. But if they can get it right, these decentralized metaverse economies could truly revolutionize the way we interact with the internet.
Okay, so how do you see this all playing out? Will we all be living in the metaverse someday?
It's impossible to predict the future. Yeah. But the research suggests a few possible scenarios. One scenario is widespread adoption. Imagine a world where the metaverse is as commonplace as social media is today. People from all walks of life, not just gamers and tech enthusiasts, are using it to connect, work, play, and even shop.
So my grandma could be hanging out in the metaverse. Maybe she could finally beat me at a virtual game of checkers.
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Wow.
Think about all the ways we use the internet today. Now imagine those experiences becoming more immersive and interactive within a shared virtual world. That's the promise of the metaverse.
That's pretty mind-blowing. What are some of the other scenarios?
Another possibility is the emergence of specialized metaverses. Instead of one giant metaverse, we could see multiple smaller metaverses, each catering to a specific niche or community. We could have a metaverse for artists, a metaverse for musicians, even a metaverse for cat lovers.
Now that's something I could get behind. I can already picture myself in the cat lover metaverse surrounded by virtual kitties. But wouldn't that kind of defeat the purpose of a connected virtual world?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But these specialized metaverses could actually foster deeper connections and create unique economic opportunities within their respective communities. Think of it like having different online forums or social media groups, each with its own focus and purpose.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the flip side? What happens if things go wrong?
That brings us to the third scenario, fragmentation and instability. If metaverse operators can't find that balance between control and freedom, if they can't build trust and ensure a safe and inclusive environment, then these decentralized economies could become fractured and volatile. Imagine a virtual world plagued by scams, security breaches, and rampant speculation.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a very appealing place to spend your time, let alone your money.
Yeah, that sounds like a dystopian nightmare. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows in the metaverse.
Definitely not. There are real risks and challenges, but the potential rewards are also enormous.
Yeah.
It's like we're at a crossroads,
Yeah.
and the decisions we make now will determine the future of these decentralized economies.
Well, this has been a roller coaster ride of a deep dive so far.
It has.
We've gone from digital deeds to virtual landlords to dystopian scenarios. But there's one big question that's still lingering in my mind.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
This research has focused on the economic side of things. But what about the social implications of all this? How will these virtual worlds affect our relationships, our communities, and even our sense of identity?
That's a crucial question, and one that we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive, because the metaverse isn't just about economics, it's about the future of human connection.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last two parts of this episode really getting into the nitty-gritty of these decentralized metaverse economies, the technology, the economics, the potential, the risks. But now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about something that's been kind of nagging at me.
Oh,
The human element. Like, what are the social implications of these virtual worlds? Are we all just going to turn into digital hermits, glued to our VR headsets, neglecting our real-world connections?
it's a question a lot of people are asking, and for good reason. But I think it's important to remember that technology, in and of itself, isn't good or bad. It's all about how we use it.
Right.
The metaverse, like any tool, can be used to build or to destroy, to connect or to isolate.
So it's not necessarily a recipe for social disaster. There's hope for us analog folks yet.
Absolutely. In
Mm.
fact, one of the most promising aspects of the metaverse is its potential to create more inclusive and accessible online spaces. Imagine a world where people with disabilities can fully participate in virtual events and activities, regardless of their physical limitations.
Now that you mention it, I can see how someone in a wheelchair, for example, could have a totally different experience in the metaverse. They could move freely, explore these virtual environments, interact with others in ways that just might not be possible in the real world.
Right.
It's like a whole new level of accessibility.
Precisely. And it's not just about physical limitations. The metaverse could also be a lifeline for people who feel isolated or marginalized in their offline lives.
Yeah.
Think about individuals who live in remote areas or people who have difficulty connecting with others due to social anxiety or other challenges. The metaverse could provide them with a sense of community and belonging that they might not otherwise have.
It's like finding your tribe, but in a virtual world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how powerful that could be for people who feel like they don't fit in. What about creating entirely new communities? Like, is that even possible in the metaverse?
It's already happening. The metaverse is fostering new forms of social interaction and collaboration that we're only just beginning to understand. We're seeing virtual concerts and events where people from all over the world can come together and share a unique experience.
And it's not just about entertainment, right? I've heard about like virtual classrooms where students can, immerse themselves in historical events or explore distant planets.
Exactly. And imagine scientists collaborating on groundbreaking research in virtual labs without being limited by physical distance or resources. The possibilities are truly mind-boggling.
Okay, I'm starting to see the upside here, but I can't help but worry about the potential downsides. All this talk of virtual connections makes me wonder if we're going to lose sight of our real-world relationships. Will we become so addicted to the metaverse that we forget how to interact with, actual human beings?
That's a valid concern. It's something we need to be mindful of as we navigate this new landscape. Like any technology, the metaverse can be used for good or for ill. It's up to us, as individuals and as a society, to ensure that we use it in a way that enhances our lives rather than detracts from them.
So how do we find that balance? How do we prevent the metaverse from becoming like a digital echo chamber where we only interact with people who think and act just like us?
One crucial step is promoting digital literacy and critical thinking skills.
Mm.
We need to equip people, especially young people, with the tools to evaluate information, to navigate online spaces safely, and to be aware of the potential risks and pitfalls of the metaverse.
So we're not just talking about teaching kids how to code.
Well,
We're
yeah.
talking about teaching them how to be like responsible digital citizens in a virtual world.
Exactly. It's like a digital citizenship curriculum for the metaverse era.
Wow.
And it's not just about protecting ourselves from harm, it's also about fostering empathy, understanding, and respect for others, even in a virtual environment.
That sounds like a tall order, especially when you consider all the challenges we're already facing with like online harassment, misinformation, polarization. I mean, how do we ensure that the metaverse doesn't just amplify those problems?
That's where open and honest conversations about the ethical implications of these technologies become crucial. We need to have those tough conversations about privacy, data security, and even our sense of self in a world where the lines between the virtual and the real are increasingly blurred.
These are huge questions with like no easy answers, but it's clear that we can't just bury our heads in the sand and pretend that the metaverse is going to magically solve all our problems.
Absolutely not. The metaverse is not a utopia. It's a reflection of ourselves with all our flaws and imperfections. And just like in the real world, it will require effort, vigilance, and a commitment to shared values to create a just and equitable society in the metaverse.
So what's the takeaway message for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they, dip their toes into this new virtual world?
I think the most important thing is to approach the metaverse with a sense of curiosity, critical thinking, and a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't believe the hype blindly, but don't dismiss the potential out of hand either. Engage with these technologies thoughtfully, be aware of the risks, and be prepared to adapt as the metaverse continues to evolve.
Well said. The metaverse isn't just a technological phenomenon, it's a social one. And ultimately, its success will depend on our ability to use it in a way that benefits humanity as a whole.
Exactly. It's a collective endeavor, and we all have a role to play in shaping the future of this new frontier.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. We've explored the economics, the technology, and the social implications of these decentralized metaverse economies. And while we've covered a lot of ground, I think it's safe to say we've only scratched the surface.
The metaverse is a vast and uncharted territory, full of possibilities and perils. But one thing is certain, it has the potential to reshape our world in profound ways.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. We hope this episode has given you a better understanding of this complex and rapidly evolving landscape. But more importantly, we hope it sparked your own curiosity and inspired you to think critically about the role you want to play in shaping the future of the metaverse. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.